So, hey, Coach, I appreciate you taking a little bit of time to stop by a little bit and do one segment with us. But to play Malachi Coleman, I had to ask you this. You saw that play, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, that looked eerily close to 32 option pass.
That's what it was.
I told you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
32 option pass. I knew it.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it. It's a beautiful play call. Coach, why did that play work?
Well, as you know, when you run a lot of option, people have to use their secondary to cover all the bases. I mean, the quarterback keep, the pitch, and so one thing that I visited with Matt Rhule and his staff, and so we talked a little bit about some things that we used to do off the option, and that was one of them. And so it helps keep people honest, and so I think that they're on a good path, good trajectory, and a lot of offensive injuries. You know, I've never seen that many injuries on one side of the ball.
Yeah.
And you've lost at least 2 or 3 of your top receivers, offensive linemen, the top 2 running backs. But they've been fortunate because they have been practicing a little bit like we used to, where they're using 2 offensive stations and 2 defensive stations, and that helps you have your backup guys ready if something happens. So they've been able to plug the gaps with a lot of young guys, and that'll be good for the future because you're getting good experience to some freshman kids that probably would not otherwise have played much this year.
Coach, I got another question. So with this whole red shirt deal now, you never had to really deal with that when you knew back then if you were red shirting, most of the times you were red shirting, you ain't coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Now having to juggle, especially with all the injuries, having to juggle that. How do you juggle whether or not to play this guy, burn his red shirt for maybe 5 games, or do you sit him, try to find an older guy that's been there to get through and then maybe play the guys for 4 games, excuse me.
Mm-hmm. Well, if he's your best player, I think you have to go ahead and play him. But if it's close between a senior and a young guy, then probably you do what you can to preserve the red shirt.
Yeah.
But, now if you get down to 1 or 2 games left, unless it's for a championship or something, you don't want to burn a guy's red shirt. But at this stage of the season, there's still potentially 6 games, including a bowl game, which we hope will happen. And that's pretty substantial.
Terrell?
You go ahead. I'm
Really?
still thinking.
Really?
I'm still thinking.
Okay, I can keep going. I have no problem with that. With Coach Osborne, you know I got a lot of questions.
I've never seen Terrell so quiet.
Me neither.
You know?
Coach, I'm shocked. I don't know what you just did to him, Coach. I don't know what you just did to him, but whatever you did to him, it brought him back to maybe he was in the classroom or something. I don't know.
Well, we just told him to go. You know, with Terrell, it was really simple. He didn't say take this gap. We just said go tackle the guy with the football, and he did it. He's one of the best defensive players we ever had.
Yeah. I went back and watched the Florida games because I like to go watch all those old games.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the plays that he made, like I give him a bunch of, I give him some stuff on his show. But some of the plays he made, I was like, how did he do that?
Mm-hmm.
How did he make that play? Coach, even when you recruited Terrell, did you see that in his JUCO film that he was a guy that flew around like that and he could, I don't even know how a lineman, if I was a lineman, I would just try to fall on him, they couldn't get a hold of him.
Yeah. Well, Terrell can tell you, but he had unusual speed. Not many linebackers or strong safeties had that kind of speed. And then there's also something that's kind of innate. Some guys just can find the football. And some guys, no matter how much physical gifted they are, they'll go out there and not make a tackle. And Terrell was really good at finding the ball. Another guy that was like that was Cleet Pillen. That's Jim Pillen's brother. And Cleet came down and was a walk-on player, linebacker, weighed 190 pounds. And but you put him out there, and I eventually got up around 205. But he'd make 15, sometimes 20 tackles in a game. And it wasn't anything unusual, but he just had a knack of getting the ball. And Rhule was definitely a guy you wanted on your side because he could make plays that nobody else could.
Coach, we talked about scoring. How big was it back then when we played to have a defense that scored points?
Well, that's always a big plus. I mean, you don't necessarily count on it, but if you can get 7 points, 10 points out of your defense in your kicking game, that's a big deal. If you look at I'm not a big guy for gambling. But you look at those point spreads, and usually they're 3 points, 4 points, 5 points, and so just a turnover or a big play in a kicking game can make a huge difference.
4-3, Coach. I tell these guys all the time. 4-3. We're on a 2-0 win streak. Heinrich Harburg is 4-1 as a starter. That's nothing but great news around here for us.
Mm-hmm.
Give me your report card moving forward, and then let me know we got 5 games, to go. How do we get those 5 games done, and what's the approach?
Well, the good news is that those 5 games are all winnable. The bad news, they're all losable. so I haven't really said anything, but they're all going to be tight. And Wisconsin's a good team, but they've shown some vulnerability. Iowa's a good team. So far, they really were able to eke out some close games. And last week, he got a call, and it didn't work out for him. And so they're going to be close games. And Maryland has a really good quarterback, and they can put points on the board. They stubbed their toe, I think, last week, unexpectedly. And so this week with Purdue will be interesting. And Michigan State probably isn't what they have been at times. So it's an interesting stretch, all winnable games, but also if you look at our past record, you'd have to say, they're going to be tight games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrell, you there yet?
Go ahead, Bob.
Go ahead, Bob, because I don't know where this dude is. Coach, what have you done to him, Coach?
I've never seen Terrell speechless. and I figured it out. I was saying nice things about him, but he decided he wasn't going to say anything because he wanted me to keep saying nice things about him.
Go ahead, Bob.
Coach Osborne, it's kind of interesting how, and you were kind of ahead of the curve helping Nebraska move to the Big Ten, but now California schools coming in. I mean, the landscape of college football has changed. Kirk Ferentz was hesitant to use the transfer portal. He finally started doing it. Dabo Swinney now hesitant to use the transfer portal. How would you kind of attack this modern era of college football? Would you think would you enjoy recruiting the transfer portal? Would you use it a lot? I mean, just all the new innovations of college football. Yeah. How would that look with Tom Osborne?
Well, it certainly lends a sense of instability because just like if you look back at Michigan State, like 2 or 3 years ago, they were 10-2, and then all of a sudden they only won 2 or 3 games. And I think you're going to see a lot of volatility because with the transfer portal being what it is, you could easily lose 4 or 5 key players. We could get 4 or 5 key players. And of course, the NIL thing is disturbing because people say, well, it's like pro football, but it isn't because in pro football, you have contracts. So that 90%, there'll be a few guys that are playing out their option and are free agents, but 90% of your football team is bound by a contract. In college football, everybody's a free agent right now, and that's disconcerting. And then the other thing is in pro football, you have a salary cap. So every team is limited in what they can pay their players. Now, the rumor is, I don't know if it's true or not, that Texas A&M recruited a class of 25 players, and they had $25 million in NIL money. Now, it wasn't equally divided among all those guys, but if you're at Kansas State or Iowa State or even Nebraska, you're going to have a really hard time coming up with $25 million in NIL money. And so I think able to have competitive balance, or at least some semblance of competitive balance, is going to be really hard. And I think something's got to be done. The NCAA is pretty much punted. I don't see them being any source of stability. So I think the conferences in the two major conferences right now, in terms of personnel, will be Southeast Conference and Big Ten. If those conferences will get together and say, this is what we can live with, then I think they can pretty much chart their own destiny. And now you have to worry about lawsuits. And so I don't think you're going to have it where there is no NIL anymore, but there'll be some parameters. And you're not going to probably have any hedge on the transfer portal, except you don't necessarily have to make a player immediately eligible. So if a guy can transfer with impunity, but at the same token, he's not going to be eligible for a year, that's going to slow a lot of that down. So that's a possibility. So there are things that could be done. But I think that we used to have the College Football Association. It's been quite a while ago. But what happened was that Georgia and Oklahoma sued for their own football rights, television rights. The NCAA at that time controlled basketball, football, all the broadcasts. And so when they got their broadcast rights, the NCAA didn't like that, but they formed a college football association where all the football playing schools would meet and really pretty much determine their own destiny, what the rules were. I could see something like that happening, but I don't think the current situation is sustainable long term because there's just so much inequity built into it. And I mean, that's my take. Now, I may be wrong, but it certainly makes coaching more difficult. So,
you ready, Terrell?
Oh yeah, okay, Coach. I don't know. I really don't have a question. I'm just listening
just to have a conversation.
Yeah. Well, Coach,
make sure you're alive.
Coach, you coached against Mac Brown, didn't you?
Yeah, I think so.
Texas.
Yeah, he's still coaching. Do that make you kind of miss coaching when you see a guy around your age out there still bebopping around?
Well, there are times when I miss. The first 2 or 3 years were hard, Rhule. But I called the plays, and so I spent probably 35 hours a week extra looking at film, trying to be able to anticipate what the other coordinator was going to do. And so the weeks were probably 90, 95-hour weeks. And I don't think probably I could have sustained that for a long period of time. Could have gone a little bit longer. And but so I could have coached differently. And I could, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and become sort of a CEO type coach. I mean, that's possible. But to me, the enjoyment of the game was to be involved. And so often coaches get so far removed from the X's and O's. On Saturday afternoon, they're pretty much helpless. If the coordinators can't come up with answers, they don't have any answers. And I didn't really want to get to that point. And I'd made a promise to Frank Solich, and I felt I had to keep it, and so I did. And then I looked at, there were a couple of job offers that were pretty lucrative that came, but I just thought, I can't imagine going to Michigan State or LSU or someplace like that because, this is where I coached and this is where I belong. So I stayed here. Probably wouldn't have gone into the political arena. I wasn't naturally a politician. That wasn't me. But I still had some energy. And when the 3rd District Congressman resigned, I thought, well, I could maybe make a difference there. So gave that a 6-year shot. But, my wife stayed here and my kids were here. And so that didn't make sense to stay with that very long. So anyway, that's why I'm here today. second guessing, living in the past,
throwing out plays, huh, Coach?
Talking old players.
Do you think the option can work in this era of football right here? Not a every down, probably like a every other down situation.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think one of the things that people should understand about offense is that, and we learned this from playing Oklahoma. We'd play 10 games, and then at the end of the year, we'd play the wishbone. And the wishbone was entirely different because they'd have somebody stop the fullback dive, somebody on the quarterback, somebody on the pitch. That meant you had to involve your safeties. Your secondary had to be involved. And so it was an entirely different animal. And you had 4 days. You had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to get ready. Friday was just a loosen up day. And finally we figured out, we better spend more time on this. So every Monday we would spend a 20-minute period working on the wishbone. So by the time we hit them at the end, it wasn't like just 4 days. It was like we had maybe 6 or 7 days. And so option football, if you can do something and do it well that other people don't see all the time, it's an advantage. And so right now you got everybody in a spread formation, inside zone, outside zone, a little bit of play action pass, and mostly drop backs, and everybody does the same thing. So if you can do things and do them well that they don't see, it's a real advantage. And so that's why I think particularly today, I would think being a good option team would give you an edge. And then if you could run a few passes, come off of that. And that's what happened last week with Malachi Coleman. They'd run a few options, and pretty soon their safeties were committing, and then all of a sudden Malachi's got a lot of room to run back there. So, yeah.
Coach, I got one more question, and we're gonna throw it to break and let you go because I'll try to trap you here for a couple hours.
The meter's running, and so the longer I sit here, the more I get paid.
That's right. That's right. That's what we do here at the TIC. So they talked about, it's this big deal about signal stealing. Mm-hmm. People stealing the signals. Guys holding up the boards and the cards, and I always go back to, what'd you say, Coach? 47 die pass, 2 delay flat. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I go run the play in. That's how I knew it was 32 option pass, because I've seen it before. You've told me to go take the play in before. So I go take the play in, and I go tell the quarterback, whether that's Tommy, it doesn't matter, Eric, Scott, Mickey, you go back, it doesn't matter. McCant, Steve Taylor, the option to change the play at the line, and for the defense not to know what we were doing because you told me to play, which I wouldn't told the quarterback, are we, and I don't want to say dumbing down the players by showing these boards and not making them think about it mentally?
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with you that number one, if you stop play and look over the sideline to change the play, that's the only way you change the play. That gives the defense an opportunity to change defense. And most of them are now. If you watch them, they're changing their defense. So you really don't get much advantage from changing a play because you've seen them line up initially. So, we sent the plays in from the sideline. But I spent a lot of time with the quarterbacks in meetings. And so I wanted them to be able to think just like I did. And so if we had a play called that was sort of a dead play because of the way they were lined up, then we gave them complete freedom to change the play. And so sometimes we just said 32 option check. And if going to the right didn't look good, they just say opposite. And we go left. But then if neither side looked good, we'd say check. And we go 41, 41. And that was 41 pitch. And so we had the quarterback control, at least had the freedom to control everything. And so we didn't end up with the signals and all that kind of thing. And sometimes looking over at cards does slow the game down a lot, but it gives the defense a lot of chance to recover. But I think that the thing that I really appreciated was when you spent an hour and a half with quarterbacks every day, I didn't have to worry. They would see it exactly the way I saw it. In other words, we would end up in the play that I would have called, and if they decided to audible. So that was what we did. Mm-hmm.
Terrell, you got nothing else?
No, I'm good, sir.
You good?
My coach said he was ready to go. So.
Yeah.
No, he said the meter was running. He said he was ready to go.
He just don't want to break your heart. That was the nice way to say it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, anyway, it's nice to talk to you guys, and I'm amazed at Terrell's reticence to speak. But I know that when I leave here,
I'm gonna crank it back up.
he's gonna open up.
Yeah, I'm gonna crank it up.
Yeah.
Well, Coach, it's always good to see you. It's always good to be around you and to hear the knowledge that you have. I know that obviously Coach Rhule and crew are listening to some of the things that you have and you've done. I think that was successful because I don't think we see the 32 option no other way.
Yeah.
Pass.
Well, yeah, just let me make one more comment,
Yes,
and
sir.
that is I want to make sure that people understand that I never go down and tell a coach this is what you need to do. But if a coach says, "Hey, we're thinking about this. What do you think?" If they ask my opinion, then I'll certainly feel free to do that. But I don't ever want to be seen as somebody's looking over their shoulder or trying to influence. These guys have been in coaching a long time. They know what they're doing and they know their players. And so the worst thing you can have is some old guy deciding he's going to influence things. So
you just not.
I just want to make sure we don't do that.
Some old guy. That's what you fell to. This is an old guy, Coach.
Yeah.
With a bunch of bodyguards. A lot of them.
Yeah, there you go.
He's not an old guy. You're a legend, Coach. So I appreciate you.
Well, then I'm an old legend.
Yeah.